Here's something that I know I struggle with, um, and I know a lot of us do as well. It's really a product of our society and the way we're almost taught to look at things because of the world around us, but appreciating what is there, not what's not. So, the thing that made me think about this was, um, at the time of recording this, it's been a few days since the Knicks faced the Kings, and Jalen Brunson went down. And I looked at the score early in the fourth quarter, and they were just out there kicking butt. You know what I mean? And so many people are like, oh, it's the Kings. But it's like, no, you have to play who's in front of you. The Kings have capable players out there, and it's one of those things where you have to take care of the job, especially when you're still in the middle of the season and have about 20 games left. So the one thing that I was looking at was just, for even if you want to say the Knicks aren't real contenders because they're not beating the contending teams, you can't see them winning the title. So much of what we do in NBA fandom is talk about what a team isn't rather than what they are. And that's one of the things that I feel like used to be there in fandom, where it was like, I saw a lot of people, especially just living down in South Carolina. I knew a lot of Hornets fans that didn't really care that the Hornets were bad every year. They just wanted to see players like Kemba Walker be able to shine. You know what I mean? They wanted to appreciate the players that were there and what they could and what they couldn't do and have fun, whether they were winning or losing, just seeing awesome players hoop. And that's one of the things that we've lost in the modern fandom part of it, because if you're not a contender, we almost write you off like we don't care about you. And it brings up this larger piece of life where it's like just appreciating what's in front of you. I made a video about Steins Gate, and it touched on that, and Assassination Classroom touched on that, especially with Koro Sensei teaching the kids those life lessons about just believing not only in yourself and your ability, but using what you already have rather than searching out something new, maximizing what you have in the pursuit of something new, not getting lost along the way. And you hear it in so many cheesy different ways, but the reason I think we hear it so often is because it's one of those things that we've forgotten in modern society. Like, the thing about life is that we're all gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, it's all going to be over for us eventually. So, like, the most important part isn't amassing all of these things while we're here. It's more so about just walking that journey out and seeing the things along the way and being grateful for the things that you do have in front of you. Like, I often tell, like, I'll be talking about this with some of my friends sometimes. I'll be like, when I study history, the more I realize how privileged of a time we're really living in, because it wasn't that long ago that, like, reading was not fundamentally something you would expect out of the general population. And I'm not talking about like a couple of 100 years ago. I'm talking about like 100 years ago, especially when you're talking about blacks in America. If you're talking about blacks in America, it was just about 70 years ago they were getting to the point where they were desegregating schools. So it was one of those things where, like, education was so key because it was such a new thing that it was like some of those kids during that time were some of the first group of kids that even had access to public education. You know what I mean? Like, if you start to realize that it wasn't that long ago, like not many generations ago, like those kids' grandparents were sharecroppers right before them. So, like, they didn't have any formal education except how to survive out there in the world, how to, like, work. If it wasn't working, if it wasn't about providing for their survival, they didn't know anything else. So, like, being able, and that's why, like, I've gotten back into reading and stuff like that more, because I'm just trying to take advantage of the things that are in front of me. And that's one of the things that's in front of me, like being able to read. You know what I mean? Like, and being able to read at a high level and be able to understand things is something that you just cannot take for granted, because there are still people in the world that can't do it. There are still people living in America that can't do it. The average American reading level is that of a sixth grader. You know what I mean? So, like, if you can read at a higher proficiency level than that, you're blessed. You know what I'm saying? Like being able to even get to the point where I can come in here and one of my hobbies is just making these kind of videos for you guys, like where it's like sharing my thoughts on things that wasn't possible not even 100 years ago. That wasn't possible 20 years ago. Like this is like almost my very own personal radio station, and I get to come here whenever I want to and just give the thoughts that I want to the people about whatever I want to give them to. And that's not something that we could have done 20 years ago. Like if you didn't have a radio station gig, you know what I'm saying? And even then, like if you had a radio station gig, you were talking about and discussing the things that they had that the ad dollars were paying for. Like you couldn't get on here and just yap about things like this. But I can bring it to you in my own personal, like I get to be my own personal radio personality. Like, you know what I mean? You can build websites yourself. That's something that only skilled professionals could have done 20, 30 years ago. The advent of there being computers in the homes is only something that came about in the early 80s. You know what I mean? Being able to have complex video games on the way that we can have them for entertainment is something that didn't come about that long ago. Having music be personalized to where we can carry it around in our pockets hassle-free is something that came around not that long ago. Being able to have homes where you're heated at all times of the year, have running water that cleans itself, being able to store things for days and weeks on end with refrigerators, being able to stay up at all times of the night because you have electricity and lights. Those are the things that we weren't able to take advantage of just about 50 years ago at this high of a proficiency level. So like you look at the times that you're in and you realize you have all these modern conveniences and you're blessed because you have more than what most people had. I don't know how many of you I'm going to lose here, but the Bible prophesies about this. There's a point in Revelation where John is talking and he's talking because the angel of the Lord is talking to him about the churches in Laodicea. And those churches are meant for the churches at the time, but they're also meant to be time capsules. So like each church refers to a different point in history. And it's believed that we're the church at the end that the Lord is talking about. And what he says about us is we're neither hot nor cold, and that we have more riches than everybody, but we're poorer in spirit. And that's very true when you look at the world around us. Like for us to act like we're so poor in all of these things, we have more than not only what most people have around the world today still, but then 100 years ago, just 100 years ago, just like 2 generations ago, we have more than what most human beings throughout history have access to, even if you're not at the top of the totem pole. Like to be able to have transportation and cars that can get you from one place to another, whether your car is old or whether, as long as it works, you have a system of transportation that can get you from point A to point B like nobody else in this world has had. Like most people in world history have not had access to. Having access to the internet is one of the greatest, it's probably the greatest invention in human history. You have access to the greatest invention in human history. Being able to read at this high of a proficiency level, being able to write at this high of a proficiency level is just something that's not normal. Having this level of comfort between being able to choose what you want to eat every day, choose what you want to wear every day, having that many clothes to where it's that accessible to you. That's something that's not, when you look at world history, it's not something that's normal. And so many people are caught up in today that it's just like all of that sounds good, but like there's always a but thrown into it, but it's like that but is getting in the way of you being able to recognize how awesome of a life that you could be living. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's like, Maya, you got all of that from an NBA basketball game. And it's like, yeah, because that's just how my brain works. That's just how I think about things sometimes. And like I get lost in it. I get caught up in it too. So I understand it. You know what I mean? Like I get lost in the conveniences. It's so easy for us to do. But you do have to bring yourself back to reality. You do got to ground yourself with it. And you do have to look around and say, My job may be shitty, but in the context of human history, it's a very good it's very good to be able to get paid the amount I'm getting paid and to be able to afford the luxuries that I'm able to afford and not have to be in a coal mine and not have to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's you gotta look at it from a different perspective, because in the context of human history, even our poor, especially in America, are living lavish. They're living very well. They're living at a pretty good degree. Like, if you can take a bath every day reliably, you're living at a pretty high level for human history's standard. You know what I mean? And that's just the way that I try to look at it. And that's the thing that some of these pieces of fiction that I've been consuming have been reminding me of. And that's one of the things I just wanted to remind people of today. Perception is everything. The way you look at life will color the lines in between your life a ton. So, appreciate y'all for watching. Peace.